Thank you very much, Peter.
Thank you for coming to see us.
Sure. So Living Well Senior Solutions is a part of Episcopal Retirement Homes. We are a geriatric care management program. And what that means is we help families navigate the healthcare system, senior living, all those things that can happen. Maybe if children are out of town or spouses aren't sure what to do, or maybe they don't have any family. So what a geriatric care manager is kind of like a care contractor. So we don't provide home care, but we do kind of help manage to get all those pieces in place so people can live well into the future, just so you're aware. Most people don't have a clue. It's a big title and don't have any idea what we do. So the definition of elder care looks very, very simple. Care of elderly people, especially in the home. But for most of us who have either been responsible for caring for elderly parents or a spouse or brothers or sisters or that kind of thing, we know that it's anything but clear how to provide elder care sometimes and how complicated that can be. So the reality of elder care is most of us will be involved with caring for someone else at some point in our lives, in our adult lives. So I don't mean just children, but I do mean a parent, a spouse, a sibling, but somewhere in a neighbor, somewhere in there we're going to be caring for someone. And as many of you earlier shared with me, you already have. So as we know, it can be a 10-year commitment, a 5-year commitment, a 25-year commitment, but it does take a lot of time. So our objective today is to try and provide some tips on effective planning, some options, and hopefully some answers to help us navigate through perhaps our future in elder care. So if we eliminate some of the worry and stress, hopefully we can assure a meaningful life for ourselves and also take some stress off of our family. So I have a planning IQ quiz, but I'm not going to make you write anything down, so I won't score you. But do you think it's possible that someday you may require long-term care? Probably for most of us, that answer would be yes. And have you looked into what it would cost if you ever needed nursing home care or assisted living or independent living? So have you looked at what those monthly charges might be? And have you ever talked with your adult children, friends, or your siblings about whether or not they would be able to help care for you or what kind of support they would be able to provide? Have you ever looked into or spoken with a financial planner or an insurance agent or an attorney or a financial advisor about how you would pay for long-term care services should you need those or when you need those in the future? And have you specifically set aside some funds to pay for long-term care? So basically, most of us have started looking at that process, and I see a lot of head shaking, so that's really good. I think some of you are far advanced, but there are many people out there that don't have any idea what it is or what it costs or what it takes to provide some elder care. So we're going to learn how to start to prepare and plan ahead for the inevitable. Unfortunately, there is a 100% probability we all will die. Don't know when, don't know how, but that's going to happen to all of us. So before that crisis occurs, we want to try and get all of our stuff in order and explore different options so that we have some input and some choice and have the ability to communicate that to those that are going to be helping us what we want. So starting early, having difficult conversations, we were talking about that earlier, and those mean meaningful and important conversations about long-term care, finances, what our wishes are for the future, the cost of care and how we plan on paying for that, if our legal paperwork's in order, and then some different options for care and housing and payment options for doing that. So beginning those conversations is really important, and an easy way to do that is by using current events. So if a neighbor just fell and had an injury, or if a neighbor just became ill, or a family member just passed away, or a relative somewhere in the family just made a move to a supported living environment. Those are all wonderful times to just start that conversation, because you can start it by saying that, you know, when Aunt Mary fell and broke her hip and had to go into rehab, you know, that started me thinking, this is what I would like to happen, or this is what I would not like to happen. So you can do that. We always want to validate the feelings, and for us as parents, even of our adult children's feelings, because as we were talking earlier, it's us perhaps having those conversations with our kids, and many times our children don't want to hear that. They don't want to hear that there's a 100% probability we're going to pass away. They don't want to hear that we're getting older. They don't want to hear where we want to go. They don't want to hear any of that because they just aren't in a position in their mind to be able to accept that. So it's just a really good idea to start those conversations and to listen to what their challenges are. Hopefully they will listen to what our challenges are and what our wants really are, and to really try and partner. And we can partner with our kids, we can partner with our parents, we can partner with our spouses, we can partner with our parents if they're still certainly, you know, with us. So it's always a good conversation if we do have parents that we think might need some care in the future also, is to talk to your spouse. What would you feel, what would you do if my parents need help? Would you be willing to let them come and live with us? Would you be willing to, you know, help support that? It is very, very stressful on families when they're involved in parent care and still trying to raise children. And a good example I have of this is my mom is now 92, but she has vascular dementia, and she primarily lives with my sister in Florida. My sister is the typical grandmother who's raising a grandchild, has 2 children that they're working to not necessarily support, but, you know, working to get on the right path, and now is involved in, you know, parent care. So that is very stressful on their relationship, to try and deal with someone who has pretty fluctuating dementia, as well as on the totally other end of the spectrum, still kind of raising a grandchild. So it's really important that those conversations be held with our spouses and our families too, if we're looking at that. Also, what about if you became sick as a spouse? How do I feel about if I became sick, or if you became sick? And what if we both became ill? What's our plan going to be? So those are just really good conversations to have. They don't have to be all the time. They don't have to be negative, but it is a really good idea to get that out on the table, because in my particular situation, my husband had an aneurysm when he was 35, and I can assure you that at 35, when our kids were small, that was the last conversation we ever held before, you know, in regards, I mean, we just didn't even think it was possible that life could change so much. But as we get older, now we're having those conversations again, because while we've made it through the last 30 years, it's been wonderful. You know, health concerns are now coming up again, and it's time that we really get some ideas in mind of, you know, what we would like to do and how we want our children to support our decisions. So, understanding the issues, when we are working with parents, or perhaps a spouse that has a challenge, or perhaps a sibling that has a challenge, it's really important to realize a lot of that conversation is about loss. And again, I'm not saying this is a negative topic at all, but I think it's real. You know, we start having those thoughts about, oh, they can't live alone anymore or whatever. When we start to decline in health or physical ability, or the ability to be safe in our home. So that's really a loss of control, or a loss of health, or a loss of physical abilities or friends. You know, how many times do we get lonely because our friends, an example, my mom at 92 has very few friends left because they're just not in a position, even if they are still living, to be able to provide that social support that we, you know, had when we were 40. dignity, and then, of course, purpose, choice, and freedom. So it's just a real important for us to be cognizant of that. And while we all would like to be, dancing in the streets, in reality, there are some challenges that we start to face as we get a little bit older. So planning ahead, I cannot tell you enough how important it is to try and do that before there's an emergency that happens. I received a phone call this morning that one of our, a friend of mine anyway, her parents live in a different city in Ohio. Mom's sick, what should she do? She doesn't have any of the paperwork. She doesn't have the list of medications. She doesn't know what's going on. She doesn't know her medical history. All she knows is dad has shared with her, or her meaning the daughter, that mom can't walk today, even with the assistance of her walker, and her left leg is extremely swollen. Well, we all have that little bit of panic in our life when we hear something like that or receive that phone call, and you're really kind of shooting in the dark. So as far as what you think could even be going on. So we're going to get a list of emergency phone numbers, know some medical information and prescriptions, get together some legal and financial and insurance paperwork. And some things some of us forget are, does everyone know how to access like garage door openers, house alarms, where the keys are, if the safe can be opened, some really basic stuff. Now, I'm not saying to broadcast this over your entire family, but if all of that is kept very private and no one even knows how to access your house, then, or where some important paperwork might be, that could be a bit of a challenge. So I brought today, and you're certainly welcome to pick one up, it is a planning ahead guide from Episcopal Retirement Homes, and it has all kinds of forms in there to fill out. It is a little time consuming to do that. I'll be the first to admit that, but it is well worth it. So emergency phone numbers. Neighbors, family members, who the power of attorney is, physicians, specialists that you may have, attorneys, financial planners, trust officers, insurance agents. It's a really good idea to keep that all in a central location. As far as your neighbors and family, you may want to keep those on the refrigerator, very easily accessible, or right by the phone. And again, if 911's called, who's that EMT going to call to follow up and notify family that you're headed to the hospital? For any of our folks, that we always encourage a personal emergency response system, which is the, help me, I've fallen, I can't get up button. And there's many different brands out there. You'll provide them with a list of phone numbers to call, whether it's children, or other family members. Sometimes your geriatric care manager gets called. So whatever numbers are associated with that device will get called as well. But it's really important to have those posted somewhere because sometimes people just aren't aware of what those phone numbers are. So especially if we live alone, clergy is also a really good idea to have the church have your number somewhere. So creating a medical history and making sure that at least, somebody is aware of what your history is. Most of us tend to be very private maybe about what we have medically wrong, and I'm not saying that you need to share every little detail, but if there's a heart condition and your children don't even know that, then when you're on your way to the emergency room, it may delay a little of that. We're getting much better with electronic medical records, and we're getting much better of folks speaking to each other as far as physicians and through those medical records. But I can assure you there's still a chance that the physician that sees you in the emergency room does not know what your medical history is. So we want to make sure that for yourself, you keep a medical history, you keep your lab values, you keep the tests that you are having. If for no other reason, then 5 years down the road, when something else changes a little bit, you can say, I think I ran into this a few years ago, and you can go back and look it up. Or if you're having blood work and lab work done and you go to a different specialist and they order it all again, you have the opportunity to say, I just had this done. Do I need to, pay to have it all done again? Because of course we're all concerned about our healthcare insurance and what we're paying for, and we should be. And there's no reason why we need to get poked at 3 different doctor's visits for the exact same lab work. But we can keep track of that ourselves, and we can make ourselves accountable. Knowing what our medications are, what they're for, who prescribed them, and tracking when you went on, when you came off, when it was increased, when it was decreased, is all just a really good thing to kind of keep track of. So if it's our parents we're looking at, again, a really good thing to start looking at that big basket of medications that's sitting on top of the refrigerator. We're not sure what's expired, what's not expired, what's still good, what's not good, what they're on, what they're taking, how their system works. So for ourselves, it's important, but it's also important to get a kind of a baseline on mom and dad or our spouse or a sibling that we may be starting to provide care for. Another suggestion is that you take their list or your own list to every appointment that you go to, just to make sure, again, that everybody's cognizant of what medications are being taken. And as my friend said this morning, I don't really know. I think she was on potassium and I think she was on magnesium, but I really have no idea. So again, it would have been really nice before she called the doctor to say, I know this is what mom's taking and these are her symptoms. We also have, through Episcopal Retirement Homes, we have the Yellow Dot program, which you may be participating in here. Also the Vial of Life program, which is a very brief medical history. You put the magnet on your fridge and the vial either in your refrigerator or in your freezer, so that when emergency services do come, they can grab your medical history and have it readily accessible. And there are some samples of that as well back there. So keeping copies of insurance cards and claims, again, if it was our parents, for ourselves as well, but are they on straight Medicare? Are they on managed Medicare? Are they on supplemental insurance? Is everything being filed correctly? So nowadays there could be multiple kinds of insurance that's involved in processing that claim. So it's just a really good idea to, again, just have that conversation, kind of get that in order, and make sure that they're taking advantage of everything that they're entitled to when it comes to their insurance or what kind of options they have. Keeping a copy of the medical health care power of attorney. We're getting very conscious now of HIPAA regulations and who can release information to who, and if you're a health care power of attorney for a parent or a sibling or a spouse, well, not a spouse, but a parent or a sibling, or you want to make sure that you have that copy or that's accessible. If it's a parent, they want to make sure that whoever their healthcare power of attorney is has an accessible copy of that. Because when they get to the hospital, they're going to request, who the healthcare power of attorney is, and we want to make sure that the right person is notified. And then again, making wishes known. And I know you had some series last year with hospice, but advanced care directives can really inform families on how to make important healthcare decisions if you can't speak for yourself. So Yellow Dot program is for your car, Vial of Life is for your home, always keeping a current list of medications in your wallet and assuring that somebody else is aware of them as well, whoever's going to be speaking for you if you can't. Financial and legal information, again, in the planning ahead guide, there's places to write down things like your financial institutions and your bank accounts and your who's responsible for your estate plan and who needs to be contacted and your insurance folks and so forth. And this isn't always on a permanent, it could be if something tragic happens that's a little more life-threatening, but it could also be that short-term, you're in the hospital and rehab for a month, who's paying the electric bill? Or who's paying the phone bill? Or who's paying the water bill? Or who's paying whatever bills are coming through and who has access to be able to do that. So it's a good thing, again, to just kind of work through who would be doing that for me. A lot of people pay stuff online now, so bills don't come to our homes all the time like they used to. So who's keeping up with that? Some things are on automatic withdrawal. Some things are, you have to click the button to pay the bill. So it's just a good idea to kind of have that all in order. So often in my situation and the families I work with, no one wants to give up their finances for someone else to help control those. But once someone does help, it's a big relief. And mom now doesn't have to worry about paying her phone bill anymore. It's just taken care of. I have another client that we work with that we got a bill paying service involved because they weren't capable and didn't really have family. We personally do not pay bills, but we got a service involved so that we could make sure there was accurate record keeping and that his bills were all paid on time and nobody had to worry about his electricity or his cable TV being shut off. And it's a wonderful system. Lots and lots of help out there available if we want to. And then end of life care. And again, I brought some copies, which I know you went through last year, of having the difficult conversations and conversations of a lifetime. And these are for someone who's a little bit more advanced or has a little more chronic conditions than just those of us that are sitting in the room today. But it's really a way to make sure that we're documenting what our choices are at the end of life and to assure that they're honored. If we don't know, then we can't make sure that our parents' wishes are honored, or if our children don't know, we can't make sure that our wishes are honored. It's very individual. There is no right or wrong answer. It's a very difficult topic to talk about, but this is a great handout for conversation starters for those. There's lots of suggestions in here. But it's nobody's business but our own. It's our life, and our choices need to be known so that they can be respected. So we've gone through all the documentation. We want to keep track of everything, and we want to make sure that people around us know what our choices are going to be. So now, what are some care and housing options that we can be looking at for where we want to go? So a living environment, obviously, is housing, where we physically reside. But the care options are the things that really are going to provide for our day-to-day needs. So whether we stay at home with support or perhaps move to a different care setting. So staying at home, when we purchase our home, first home, maybe second or third home, generally a lot of thought and planning goes into that. We're checking out neighborhoods, we're checking out schools, we're checking out taxes, we're checking out ambiance, and if we're comfortable. And I think that it's a really good idea to look at future options from that same standpoint. So the location, do we want to stay in this neighborhood? Do we want to move by children that may live in other parts of the country? Do we want to stay in the city or be more suburban? Is the neighborhood where we're living now still safe, or do we want to move to a different neighborhood? So all those things should go into that. Maybe we have a lot of friends living in one place or another. So if we don't have an idea of where we would like to go for rehab, or maybe where we would like to move to independent living or assisted living, or to an eventual nursing home if that should be needed, then sometimes those choices are going to be made for us, and it may not be what we want. So again, looking at our own home, where's that location now? Can we stay there? How well does it meet our needs? Are there lots of stairs? Does it provide for easy mobility? Can the bathroom, be adjusted, or will it work? I can tell you that, again, when my youngest son went to college, we moved to a condominium, which is no big deal, except that I made sure this one was very handicapped accessible and very user-friendly. Our old home had steps to get in, and we had a ramp. It had an upstairs, it had a basement. It was difficult to maneuver. It was an older home, so it had small bathrooms. Not that all that didn't work then, but going forward, that would not work now. So we have single-story, walk-in showers, elevated toilets, lots of grab bars, the things that my husband currently needs now to make life a little more user-friendly for him. So home safety, those kinds of things, adaptive equipment. A lot of homes can be modified if a person needs and or wants to stay there. Bathrooms can be remodeled. Certainly grab bars can be installed. Chair lifts can be put in. There's a lot of things a lot of home modifications that can be made. But then again, looking at the home, lawn mowing, snow removal, cleaning gutters, isolation of a person because friends, again, are not in a position to stop by, and maybe neighbors aren't even in a position to stop by. So it's not that it can't be done. I'm certainly not against people staying in their own home. We do that all the time to promote people staying in their own home. But they're just things to look at. Is this really where I want to be? Or is this the best for me? And then care at home, and care again is what we're getting or needing to go through day to day. So it could be support with what we call activities of daily living, which are bathing, dressing, grooming, getting dressed, meals, shopping, using the telephone. So we have to kind of inventory our resources. A little bit money, but also our personal resources. Do we have friends? Do we have neighbors? Do we have family that can help support part of that too? Are we close to a senior center? Are there programs that we could be entitled to help support us? So when it comes to housekeeping or going shopping or running errands or providing transportation, do we need medication administration? Do we need somebody to set it up? Do we need reminders? Are we trying to manage medical conditions? You know, the difference sometimes between a person staying at home and a person having to move to a higher level of care is what their chronic conditions are and what it takes to be able to manage those, and if there is the support to be able to do that at home. You can do almost anything at home. It just takes some, you know, juggling, and we're all in a different position when it comes to support. So do we need care 24 hours a day, or do we need care for a few hours? And is there an adult day program that might be able to help during the day, particularly for, you know, maybe a married couple where the spouse has some dementia issues? It's a nice way for them to get some socialization and activity, and a nice way to give their spouse a little bit of a break. So the cost of care at home. And again, we can go through our resources and so forth. There may be some support programs that are available through the Council on Aging, either from a Medicaid standpoint or passport, or through a sliding scale kind of situation. The Elderly Services Program can provide some support. Meals on Wheels is available if we're homebound. But if we need 24-hour support and we need someone else other than family to provide that, then non-medical, and it's termed that because they're not really a nurse or a physician, they're usually a caregiver, care averages about $20 an hour. There may be some that are, well, there are some that are a few dollars less, and there's some that are a few dollars more, but the average is about $20 an hour. If you need a skilled nursing visit, not under your Medicare, they are usually going to range about $50 or $60 an hour. And then there is a lot of technology that's out there that can help you stay at home as well. We've talked about the personal emergency response button. There are blood pressure cuffs and glucometers and oxygen, O2 stats that can all be monitored from a remote location to help keep you healthy and stay at home. There's big computer, I say big, but computer systems with touch screens so you can stay in touch with friends and family and Skype with your family across the country and monitor and even eat dinner with your kids even though they're on the other side of the country because your screen's on and everybody's sitting at the table. But again, sometimes we have to look at what that cost is and if we can afford it and if it works, if it's what's best for us. So medication reminder systems, there are nice little systems, we use these a lot, that plug into a cell tower or a phone line that actually prompt a person to take their medicine. If the problem is that you're just forgetting to take it because you forget at noon you're supposed to take it, they're wonderful systems. They do not make sure you get they can make sure you get the medicine out of the box or open the box to get it out, but they can't assure that you're getting it from your hand to your mouth. So I had a client just recently that for the last 2 years, she's had a wonderful medication system. It's worked perfectly. But within the last 2 weeks, she started taking the medicine out of her box and putting it in her drawer. So obviously, that is now no longer a valid solution for her particular situation. And so even in the best of circumstances, somebody has to be monitoring that somewhere along the line because it was never calling to say or prompting us to say that, so-and-so missed their medication. She was very good about that, opening the box and just putting it somewhere else. So, there's always got to be, in my opinion, some kind of human intervention and a little bit of supervision. So housing options, again, we talked about location and some types of supported living options, affordable housing. Episcopal Retirement Homes has a lot of affordable housing. What those are usually apartments for lower income seniors. What I'm very honored about and I think is absolutely fabulous with our affordable housing is we also add additional services like activities, transportation, health screenings. Those kind of services are brought into our affordable housing community. So while they're not assisted living and they're not providing one-on-one care, there is additional support that are in those environments. Senior apartments, very often you'll see senior apartment buildings, which are great. They're great for socialization and so forth, but there won't be really services built into that apartment building per se. You can still get services from the outside. Continuing care retirement communities are communities that have like independent living, assisted living, maybe memory care, and then nursing facilities as well, all in one campus or in a similar location. Independent living usually is going to have meals, housekeeping, activities, transportation, someone sort of keeping an eye on you. If they don't see you for a day, somebody's going to be checking on you, security. So there is a level of support in independent living. I always encourage people, if that's really a goal to move to independent living, to really consider it sooner rather than later, because to move right before you need a lot of care, you're not going to reap the benefit of even being in that environment. You want to go when you can take part in the activity programs and meet a lot of people and be very active and work out in the wellness center every day and go swimming and do all the wonderful things that style of living has to offer. But if we wait too long, sometimes those get a little narrowed down in our choices of things we're able to do. So if that isn't your goal and if that's something you'd like to do, I just encourage you to really check that out a little bit sooner rather than later. Assisted living is where there's some margin of support. It could be medication reminders, maybe they have a nurse on staff. They usually, well, not usually, they will provide support with those activities of daily living, so bathing, dressing, grooming, walking, transferring, those kind of things. Memory care are usually a special kind of place. And I know in the future you're going to have some dementia, a presentation on dementia from us as well. And memory cares are very special places because maybe they're secured. Because with dementia, sometimes wandering and that is an issue. But you want to make sure if that's what you're looking for, that you really find the place that's designed to provide memory care. And of course, nursing homes, there's rehab where you go and get better and come back home, or go and get better and get back to your independent living. There's also long-term care where somebody really needs a high level of care and maybe needs a lot of help transferring or has really chronic medical conditions that are difficult to manage at home and that kind of thing. So lots of choices for living. The cost of this, affordable living is usually income-based. It may be on a sliding scale, and there may be, you know, different things depending on what community you're in. Independent living, every community is going to offer different things, so it really depends on what communities you're looking at. So these are very broad ranges, about $2,000 to $4,000 a month. That may or may not include telephone. That may or may not include cable, generally not. But it usually will include meals, maybe 1, maybe 3 a day. It will usually include some kind of housekeeping. It will usually include a basic, you know, activity program. But that's where we really need to start looking and digging into what do I get for this amount. Assisted living, obviously, more care, the cost goes up a little bit. Most assisted livings are going to be a base rate plus whatever level of care you're receiving, which is in part a good thing because you're not paying for your neighbor's care. You're only paying for the care that you need. But as your care needs, or our care needs, or our parents' care needs increase, so will that cost of care. Nursing homes can range $250 to $350 a day. It's expensive to pay privately for nursing care. And then a group or personal care home, that there are a few of those coming to Cincinnati now, and really what that is a, you know, like a smaller, maybe there's 5 people in one home in a subdivision, quite honestly. So personal care homes can be very appropriate for some, and you know, again, it's very individual. We all have different, not only needs, but wants. Where do we feel comfortable? Because what's right for one will not be right for all of us. I do have, again, on the back table, some touring checklists so that if you did want to start looking for a place, whether it's for yourself, a neighbor, a spouse, or a parent, there's some really good questions to ask as you're touring or as you're calling ahead to get information. And it's everything from what kind of care is provided to how big are the apartments, to how often can you increase my rent, to when will you ask me to leave? Because maybe it's money, but maybe it's because of a behavior, or maybe it's because of a care becomes too high, or maybe we don't really encourage wheelchairs in the dining room. So if I ever needed a wheelchair, how would we accommodate that? So they're just really good questions, and they're kind of a general overview. As far as when is the right time, I also have a checklist. I brought you all kinds of checklists today, but aging concerns, because it's if you have, again, a parent or maybe a neighbor that you're like, Mrs. Smith doesn't seem to be doing so hot. It's just a little kind of review of things such as, oh, last time I was there were stacks of mail. Or she seemed to have the same outfit on that she had on last week and kind of looked like all of last week's meals were still on the front of it. And while you know, that's a kind of an indication that maybe things are slipping a little bit. If there's weight loss or weight gain, or if you happen to be close enough, we always do this on our assessments of any of our homes, we're looking at food in the refrigerator to see when it's expired, if there's a lot, if there isn't hardly any, how much fresh food there is there. If you notice a decrease in someone's social activities, or if there's all of a sudden a lot of excuses why we can't do anything anymore, or if there's a significant health change. So again, it's just kind of a review of, I wonder what I should be looking at if I think things aren't quite right. So how are we going to pay for this? And who pays for what? Medicare is something that most of us may get when we're 65 or 62, or depending on when you decide to activate that. But that's really a very short-term insurance. It is widely known today that we have 100 days of Medicare. So some of us in AIR feel that, oh, that's like 3 months worth. So if I got sick and had to go get rehab at a nursing center, that gives me 3 months to decide what I want to do. But that's not really the way that works. Most of us, at the most, will maybe get 20 days, 30 days at the most. So if our parent or ourselves or our spouse has an illness, goes for rehab, and then is admitted to in that rehab center, many people feel like they have a lot of time to make that next decision, but there really isn't a lot of time to make that next decision if a person can come home or can't come home, or what kind of support they need. So if you're getting Medicare services at home, you have to be homebound. That means you can go to the doctor, but you can't be driving a car. You can't be going to Bengals games. You can't be, going to the shopping center, and you have to be homebound. It has to be very difficult for you to get out of the house. Sometimes we have supplemental insurance with Medicare, and some people don't. Sometimes we have managed Medicare. Managed Medicare is like Anthem or Humana, where we have decided that the insurance company will manage our Medicare benefits for us. So that means the insurance company is making the decision. Now, there's sometimes for some of us benefits to doing managed Medicare, good drug plans, silver sneakers, exercise programs. There are some advantages to being on a managed Medicare plan. But if we're really ill, sometimes those, the copays maybe are a little bit higher, and the length of stays aren't quite as long. So again, that's something you have to manage, and we're right in the middle of that, where we are looking at if we're signing up for managed Medicare or what plan we want for next year. So Medicaid, it's kind of thought of as a low-income insurance program administered by the state of Ohio. But for even a couple where a spouse is significantly ill and in the nursing center for a long period of time, chances are that they perhaps could be eligible for Medicaid to help cover that stay. That doesn't mean the spouse in the community may be eligible for Medicaid, but perhaps that spouse in the nursing center is. Long-term care insurance, quite often, a lot of us have long-term care insurance now that can help supplement our activities of daily living, whether that's a caregiver, whether that's staying in assisted living. Generally, that is the trigger for that. It doesn't matter if you have congestive heart failure, if you don't need help from someone to help you with bathing, dressing, grooming, meal prep, that kind of stuff. What triggers usually long-term care insurance is help with those activities of daily living. If you've ever pursued or looked into long-term care insurance, the choices are amazing. And again, very individualistic, because there are different waiver periods, meaning you might wait 30 days for your policy to kick in, you might wait 60 days, you might wait 90 days. You might get a benefit of $150 a day, you might get a benefit of $200 a day. You might get, some of that's going to depend on your health, But again, it's just, there are many, many choices out there, and it's a very individual, it's kind of like when you bought your car insurance and you really had to look at what are those riders you want, what are the things that are important to you, what can, you know, how large do you want your deductible to be. Veterans benefits, for those of us that are veterans and served in an active period of war, there are veterans benefits that we may be entitled to through the aid and attendance program and other veterans benefits, but those can help supplement sometimes from $1,500 to $1,900 a month. So if a veteran is moving into assisted living and they have a you know, pension and an extra $1,900 a month will let them live at that community that's $3,000 a month that supplies them with those activities of daily living, then that may be the difference between being able to move there and not being able to move there. So, and then elderly services programs through the Council on Aging. So again, we want to plan for long-term care. We want to have some idea. You can see why it's important to explore some of that a little bit early, because it can really protect the family and it can protect some of our finances, but it can also protect us from having to make an emotional decision at a time for crisis in making a decision that to go somewhere or to do something that we really don't want. If a person has a chronic illness and if there are issues with how care is going to be paid for, I am a very strong advocate in people consulting with an elder law attorney, because there are trusts out there. There are you know, situations where I just really think you need to plan with an elder law attorney to make sure not only is all your legal stuff in order, but that your financial planning is also in order. There's, it's just a really good idea. They're experts at it. Not every attorney is, though, so you want to make sure that they're an elder law attorney. So as Rhonda went over with you last week, you want to make sure you take time for yourself and share your caregiving responsibilities if you're involved with that with others, join support groups, and of course give yourself and your loved ones peace. And I do have another, I see I just killed a lot of trees this week, but I do have a sheet, a lot of resources for seniors and elders. So I actually made a copy of this page and put it on there as well. But longtermcare.gov is a long-term care planning site. You can enter a lot of information and it'll spit out some information for you. Of course, AARP and Medicare.gov. There's a nursing home compare on there. There's also a home health compare on there. So what that means is you can go in and say, I want to go to Marjorie P. Lee or Twin Lakes or Glendale. And you can search those 3 nursing centers and see what their state surveys were like, how many star ratings they have, what their issues were. So that's what nursing home compare and home health compare mean. Again, does it give you an idea of what part of town? Now I'm going to narrow my search for which is the best or who surveyed the best. They're just all good resources. Benefits checkup, you can enter information and see if there's any other benefits out there that you may be entitled to receive. So for some people that are really struggling to pay for medications, for example, it'll pop up if they're eligible for some additional assistance to pay for their medications. VA, caregiver.org is the National Center for Caregiving, and of course the Council for Aging in Southwest Ohio. So thank you very much. I really appreciate your time. I believe that aging is not a number, a condition, or a disease, and I really encourage everybody to enjoy today, but do plan for tomorrow. And there are safety checklists. There are all those other checklists we went through on the back, and I'll leave some additional ones in case anybody wants some, but don't get stopped by being totally overwhelmed. Just take a little piece at a time, but I really, really encourage you to plan for your future. You know, we can have some input into this. And I also received a phone call in the car right before I came in where another one of my friends just lost her son that just started at UC. And those are the kind that, you know, we can't plan for that because no one would ever expect it. But you know what? We can plan for ourselves. We can share it with our kids. We can certainly ask our parents. And we can have a little bit of input so that when that crisis happens, people aren't panicking. So, any questions? Anything I can help you with?